Hi, it's Ileana. So recently I got to try a frequency reading technique that I have been very much familiar with for the last 15 years. It's where you do a frequency reading on things of a person's soul, the frequency of the soul. What it is the frequency now, what it was in utero before you were born, then when you were born, to now. Also, there's different frequencies that the soul has, a vibration. There's categories for the frequencies, and the frequencies have numbers. Think of it as hertz, as living hertz frequencies. Now, this type of a frequency reading, it is divided in many different categories with that hertz number. I call it hertz because it's a frequency. Every category holds its own frequency category, holds its own energetic field. We'll call it the hertz. And this particular type of a frequency reading system, it's a Russian system. It's called the Matryoshka frequency reading. Matryoshka frequency reading. It basically reads your vibrational fields, your soul fields, and it gives a hertz number. It goes up to 1000 in hertz. Now, it took me about 3 to 5 hours to do this particular frequency reading on myself. But you not only read the frequencies in the categories, you also need to do observations on each category, what is actually happening with yourself on all the fields. So it's not just reading the hertz frequency of what's in balance or imbalanced. It's also doing the observation, what's going right and what's not. It is being meticulous, it is being thorough, and it is literally seeing everything within yourself. The raw truth, the raw data. Nothing can be hidden, nothing can be removed. You see the raw data on yourself. All your vulnerabilities, all your blockages, all your imbalances, and what does need to come back into balance, what does need to be worked on, improved, sometimes reworked, redone. You're looking at all the redundancies, you're looking at all the imperfections. I felt like I was being stripped to the raw. And some of the frequency numbers, they are what they are right now, because I have things to work on, and I am. And these numbers and frequencies can change. They are not always going to be the same. And as you move up in frequency, the numbers might get higher. Or if you move downwards in frequency, the numbers might go down as well. They are not etched in stone or stamped permanently as the frequency that you just have. Frequencies change within the body, within the soul field. As you work on yourself, as you go higher in density, higher in frequency, the frequencies in these categories can change, except the utero one and in vitro. That one I think stays. That's the frequency you're born, the two frequencies you're born with, and That's just what they were, what you started out with in life. But as you grow, that number, the frequency you currently have, that can change. So I learned a lot about this technique by actually working with the categories, the frequencies, and doing the observations. I ended up with 5 pages doing the reading for myself because as a psychic, I believe that it's important to practice different techniques. Reading frequencies, reading categories, making observations, that is like calibrating a system because you're reading a frequency, you're reading a soul hertz, and it's being put in a category. I think this method is one of the most interesting ones that I've tried. It's one of the challenging ones and the best ones for figuring out your accuracy, how accurate you are at reading energies, frequencies, the body, the soul signature. I also added the aura frequency to the categories. I added another category, and you can add many different categories here. The categories can be added on to if you want. There's one for clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairaudience, for clarity, ego, health, finances. There's so many different categories within this frequency reading system. I found the categories of the frequency reading analysis in the Matryoshka the most interesting to me were health, clarity, self-awareness, finances, ego, categories that allow you to do a lot of self-reflection of who you are and what's happening within your soul field and physicality, exploring directions of what's happening to you all over the body, the soul, and as a whole. To me, categories that have depth and meaning and can provide a lot of information are important in any type of a frequency analysis or a report. So focusing on depth and meaning and value, for me, I found those types of answers to clarify a lot of things that I had questions on. Intuition, other categories, a lot of good categories in the Matryoshka. Very good categories. Categories that give you depth, that give you understanding, answers of understanding about yourself, going deep down and having good answers come up based on the categories. And again, every aspect of the category has a frequency, a hertz, a living essence, energetic frequency that is being read. It could be a very high frequency, somewhat middle-sized, medium frequency, or a low frequency, depending where you're at in your evolutionary learning, teaching process in life, in your incarnation, in your life experience while you're here on Earth, or experiencing even things sometimes off planet, or your galactic connections to things that happen in your past lives, things that are happening in your present life, or even things that will be happening in your future. These frequency numbers are all interconnected to that because this is your life history. This is your life frequency. It's exploring all of that. I wanted to really have a reading done. And we're not supposed to be biased. We're supposed to be non-biased when a reading is done for us. But I think I was humble enough to be non-biased, to be open to what would come through in the reading about myself, to really understand when it comes down to stripping everything apart to all its little parts and pieces, being at its rawest, truest state of the form, in that form, what was I seeing, and being left with once the reading was done. And again, being very neutral and just doing the reading, seeing a photo of myself. And the way these readings can be done is you need to see the whole person from head to toe to read their frequency, the hertz, for all of these categories. From head to toe to have a clear photo, a recent photo of a person with their name, first name, last name, and birth date, and gender. So just a clear recent photo of the person standing with arms uncrossed, legs uncrossed, just standing, so your body can clearly be seen to do a reading, a frequency reading. Some call it an aura reading. I call this a true frequency reading with the Matryoshka. And the Matryoshkas are these little painted dolls, wooden dolls, that start from the biggest one, goes to the smallest ones, being nested and stacked. So these are actual wooden dolls, beautifully painted ones. Russian, Ukrainian artisans used to make them in the old country. It's a very old tradition. Girls used to be gifted that kind of a hand-carved Matryoshka, which is, again, I think up to 10 Matryoshkas, maybe even 12 or 6 or 8. It depended on the carvings of the dolls. But they're not your typical dolls. It's very different. But it's considered a statue or figurine of a doll. They're very different. Very beautiful, very energetically spiritual. But the reason that this frequency reading is called a Matryoshka is because there's literally 20-40 categories stacked one after another, and there could be several subcategories within a category for the frequency reading. They're nested and stacked, these categories. That's why it's called Matryoshka, because it's nested and stacked categories and frequencies. And it really depends on accuracy of doing a true vibrational soul reading, soul signature reading of how these categories, how you read them of the frequency of the category. Russians used these frequency readings, the Matryoshka, to train Russian psychics to be spies. The best way to teach somebody how to be an accurate psychic is to train them to read a person's soul signature from top to bottom, to literally see the character of a person and their soul. You size them up psychically from top to bottom. That's a frequency reading. That's how you train psychic spies who can assess a person within 5 seconds and tell you everything about them by what's in their soul field. So it could be used as a spying technique, the Matryoshka frequency reading technique. Russians used Russian women to train them as spies with this technique. Try to Google that on the internet or use any other search engine it's not going to tell you about the Matryoshka frequency reading that much. You'll barely find anything on it because it's an old school spycraft technique that the Russians used way back when in the 1970s, training USSR, training Russian women to be psychics and doing the race into ESP, psychic ability, with the US. The CIA had their own psychic training programs and psychic spy programs. That's part of remote viewing, the Stargate program as well, a branching off into remote viewing. Because psychic abilities, intuition, equals remote viewing training as well. Psychic ability is part of remote viewing. But the Matryoshka, that's what you start with. It is an eye-opening experience doing a Matryoshka frequency reading and doing it on yourself without any bias. Leaving everything at the door and just seeing what you're stripped down to. Like literally stripped down to the raw essence of who you are and what's going on in your life. And you get a very big picture of who you are. And you also get a very detailed picture when you zoom in on the frequencies and you see the scale, because there's a frequency scale. I found this to be a very humbling experience and something that I just wanted to do with Matryoshka. What I think of it is that it really showed me some things about myself that will help me to keep working on myself, to evolve, to grow on a spiritual level, to improve my health, to improve my energies, my frequencies. There's things in those frequencies that showed up that I really need to work on. What's going on in my life right now. The frequencies really reflect that, what's physically happening to the physical body and what's happening on the soul level, and how both intertwine together. It's a very powerful lesson to do that work, the Matryoshka. The Matryoshka is really an interesting frequency reading technique, vibrational frequency as well. It is something I think all psychics should practice doing, that particular form of frequency reading. For me, I've been doing psychic work for almost 10 years now. And other work as well. Akashic Records reading, remote viewing. But wow, the Matryoshka, that is a special experience in and of itself. There's not enough words to describe how excited, elated, and interested I was to do it on myself and see what frequencies came out, because I've never fully measured my own frequencies to that 100% level to see where I'm at frequency-wise on all categories that are important. I never fully looked at myself. I've looked at parts of myself and the energies and the frequencies, but when you look at yourself as a whole and see all the frequencies and numbers, you go, oh, I have things to do here, 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 work on this, this, and this, pull this up, raise this up, improve this. It really gives you a big picture of what's going on with yourself on the physical level, on the emotional level, on the soul level, and everything put together as a whole and taken apart in parts. You can zoom in, zoom out, and have that 360-degree picture of everything going on. And I mean everything. That's what the Matryoshka does. It paints in all the energetic frequencies, the vibration, the energy, the physicality, on the soul level, on the body level, on all levels. That's exciting to me. That technique is really exciting. I just wanted to discuss that. So thank you so much, and namaste.